Some revolutions begin with a gun. Others begin with a single letter. When José Martí was just 16 years old, the Spanish Empire sentenced him to hard labor. Not for leading an army, not for plotting a rebellion, for writing. Spain chained his ankles, forced him to break stone beneath the Cuban sun, and believed it had silenced another rebellious teenager forever. Instead, it created the man who would spend the next 25 years building the revolution that finally broke Spain's grip on Cuba. He united rival generals, raised money from poor cigar workers, built a revolutionary movement stretching across continents, and convinced thousands of ordinary Cubans to fight for a nation that did not yet exist. The tragedy is that after dedicating nearly half his life to winning Cuba's freedom, he survived only weeks after returning home. He never saw the victory he had spent his life creating. But without José Martí, that victory might never have happened. This is the story of the man who wrote a revolution. José Julián Martí Pérez was born in Havana on January 28, 1853, when Cuba was Spain's richest colony. Its sugar plantations created enormous wealth. Its ports bustled with trade. But beneath that prosperity stood slavery, censorship, and military rule. Martí's parents were Spanish immigrants of modest means. No one imagined their quiet, book-loving son would one day become the empire's greatest colonial opponent. From an early age, Martí devoured history, poetry, and philosophy. His teacher, Rafael María de Mendive, encouraged students to question injustice instead of blindly obeying authority. Outside the classroom, Cuba taught even harsher lessons. Martí witnessed slavery firsthand. The suffering he saw convinced him that freedom meant more than replacing one government with another. It meant creating a nation where liberty belonged to everyone. Then history changed his life. In October 1868, Carlos Manuel de Céspedes freed the people he enslaved and called on Cubans to rise against Spain. The Grito de Yara marked the beginning of the 10 Years' War. Martí was only 15, too young to join the fighting, but old enough to discover the weapon that would define his life: words. As war spread across Cuba, Spain cracked down on dissent. Newspapers were censored, meetings were watched. Supporting independence became increasingly dangerous. Most teenagers would have stayed silent. Martí did the opposite. He began publishing patriotic newspapers with his classmates, arguing that Cuba deserved to be free. Then one private letter changed everything. A former friend had joined the Spanish Volunteer Corps, a militia loyal to the colonial government. Martí and his closest friend, Fermín Valdés Domínguez, condemned the decision in a letter. Spanish authorities intercepted it. That alone was enough. In 1869, 16-year-old José Martí was arrested, convicted of treason, and sentenced to 6 years of hard labor. Iron shackles were fastened around his ankles. He spent his days breaking stone in the quarries outside Havana beneath the relentless Caribbean sun. The chains cut so deeply into his legs that the scars remained for the rest of his life. Spain believed pain would silence him. Instead, it convinced Martí that an empire afraid of a teenager's words could never be reformed. It had to be replaced. The sentence meant to destroy him became the moment that defined him. Spain thought it had buried a rebellious schoolboy beneath chains and stone. Instead, it forged the man who would one day unite an entire revolution. Then the empire made an even greater mistake. It sent José Martí into exile. And in exile, his voice would reach farther than Spain ever imagined. Spain believed exile would solve its problem. Remove José Martí from Cuba, and his influence would disappear with him. Instead, it gave him the world. At just 18 years old, Martí arrived in Spain to study law and philosophy, but he had no intention of forgetting Cuba. Within months, he published a first-hand account exposing the brutal treatment of political prisoners in Cuba. The empire that had tried to silence him now faced his accusations on its own soil. His writing spread quickly, so did his reputation. Martí became one of the Spanish-speaking world's most respected young political writers. Yet every article, every speech, and every journey pointed back to one place: Cuba. Over the next several years, he lived in Mexico, Guatemala, and Venezuela, teaching, writing, and building friendships with reformers across Latin America. Each new connection strengthened the movement he hoped to lead one day. Then came devastating news. After 10 years of war, Cuba was still not free. The 10 Years' War had ended without independence. Thousands had died, entire communities had been destroyed. Many accepted that the dream was over. Martí refused. The problem hadn't been a lack of courage, it had been a lack of unity. The next revolution wouldn't just need brave soldiers. It would need every Cuban fighting for the same future. In the early 1880s, Martí settled in New York City. It seemed like an unlikely place to free Cuba, yet it was home to thousands of Cuban exiles, many of whom spent long days rolling cigars in factories while dreaming of returning home. By day, Martí wrote for newspapers across Latin America, becoming one of the Spanish-speaking world's leading journalists. By night, he pursued his real mission. He traveled from factory to factory, speaking to exhausted workers after their shifts. He didn't promise quick victories. He asked them to help build a free Cuba. They believed him. Workers donated part of their wages. Small contributions became rifles, ammunition, printing presses, and secret missions. The revolution wasn't funded by wealthy patrons. It was built one paycheck at a time. As Martí united exile communities across the United States, the Caribbean, and Latin America, Spanish agents watched his every move. Meetings were infiltrated, letters disappeared. One mistake could destroy years of planning. Still, the movement kept growing. Then, in 1892, Martí transformed that network into the Cuban Revolutionary Party. Its mission was simple: unite Cubans, raise money, prepare for war, and avoid the divisions that had doomed the last revolution. Only one challenge remained. The movement had found its leader. Now it needed its greatest soldiers. To succeed, Martí would have to earn the trust of two legendary commanders, Máximo Gómez and Antonio Maceo. By the early 1890s, José Martí had done what few thought possible. He had united veterans, workers, students, businessmen, and exiles behind a single cause. In 1892, he founded the Cuban Revolutionary Party. Its purpose wasn't to govern Cuba. It was to free it. Every speech, every newspaper, every secret meeting, every donation from a cigar worker's paycheck, all of it prepared for one moment: another war for independence. But Martí wasn't only planning how to defeat Spain. He was trying to protect Cuba's future. After years living in New York, he admired America's energy and opportunity, but he also feared its growing influence in the Caribbean. If Cubans failed to secure their own independence, he believed one empire could simply replace another. Then disaster struck. Years of fundraising had paid for rifles, ammunition, and supplies hidden aboard 3 ships in Fernandina, Florida. The plan was simple: deliver the weapons, arm the rebels, begin the revolution. Instead, American authorities uncovered the operation. The ships were seized, the weapons confiscated. Years of preparation disappeared overnight. Many believed the revolution was finished before it had even begun. Martí refused to accept defeat. Working almost without rest, he rebuilt the operation from scratch. Within weeks, new plans were in place. Then, on February 24, 1895, Cubans rose against Spain once again. Not every uprising succeeded, but after 17 years, the war for independence had returned. Only one thing was missing: the man who had spent nearly 25 years preparing it. As the fighting spread across Cuba, Martí faced the decision he had been preparing for his entire adult life: stay abroad and lead the revolution politically, or return home and share the dangers facing everyone else. His friends urged him to stay. The revolution needs your leadership, not your rifle. Without Martí, who would unite the movement? Who would raise money? Who would speak for Cuba abroad? Even the revolution's greatest commander, Máximo Gómez, believed Martí was too valuable to risk. But Martí couldn't ask others to sacrifice what he would not. In the Dominican Republic, he met Gómez to prepare for the final campaign. Together, they wrote the Montecristi Manifesto, declaring that Cuba's war was against colonial rule, not the Spanish people, and that black and white Cubans would fight together for a single republic. Soon afterward, they sailed for Cuba. Spanish patrols searched the surrounding waters, making the journey dangerous from the very beginning. Under the cover of darkness, they landed at Playitas. For the first time in years, José Martí stood on Cuban soil. There were no celebrations, only a handful of revolutionaries welcoming home the man whose words had helped make the war possible. As they marched inland, Martí finally met Antonio Maceo, the legendary Bronze Titan. Standing together were the revolution's three indispensable leaders: Martí the visionary, Gómez the strategist, Maceo the warrior. But while the reunion inspired the rebels, it worried the generals. Martí had built the revolution. He had never fought in one. Again and again, Gómez warned him to stay behind the lines if battle came. Martí always answered the same way. If ordinary Cubans were willing to die for the nation he believed in, then he had to be willing to die beside them. Word spread quickly through the rebel camps. José Martí had returned. Many of the soldiers had never met him, yet they already knew him. His essays had inspired them. His speeches had been read aloud in cigar factories. Long before Martí arrived in Cuba, his words already had. Soon Martí stood beside the two men who would lead the war: Máximo Gómez, Antonio Maceo. The strategist, the warrior, the visionary. Together they represented Cuba's greatest hope. But while the soldiers celebrated, the generals worried. Gómez knew exactly how Spanish officers would think. If they recognized Martí, they would make him their first target. Again and again, Gómez urged him to stay behind the front lines. Even Maceo agreed. The revolution needs you alive. Martí understood, but he couldn't accept asking ordinary Cubans to risk their lives while he remained safe. As the army marched through eastern Cuba, he shared every hardship with the soldiers. He slept on the ground, crossed rivers, marched through heat and rain. At night, he filled his notebook with thoughts about the republic he hoped would emerge after the war. He dreamed of a Cuba governed by laws instead of fear, and by its own people instead of a foreign empire. But each day brought the army closer to Spanish forces, and closer to the moment Gómez had been trying to prevent. On the evening of May 18, 1895, Martí sat beneath the trees and began writing to his close friend Manuel Mercado. It would become one of the most famous unfinished letters in Latin American history. In it, Martí revealed the purpose that had guided his entire life. Everything he had done, every article, every speech, every sacrifice, had been to secure Cuba's independence before another powerful nation could dominate the island. He admired much about the United States, but he believed Cuba's future had to remain in Cuban hands. He never finished the letter. The next morning, the rebels approached Dos Ríos. Scouts reported Spanish troops nearby. Gómez immediately prepared for battle. Then he turned to Martí one last time. Stay behind the lines. The revolution still needed its greatest voice. Martí listened quietly. Then he mounted his horse. The revolution he had built with words was about to test him in battle. Martí had already done what no soldier could. He had united the revolution. If he fell, Cuba would lose its greatest voice. For a moment it seemed Martí would obey. Then the battle erupted. Smoke filled the air, rifle fire echoed through the trees. Instead of remaining behind the lines, Martí mounted his horse and rode toward the fighting. Whether driven by instinct or conviction, he refused to ask others to face dangers he would not face himself. But Martí wasn't an experienced soldier. He wore dark clothing that made him easy to recognize. Spanish troops quickly spotted him. Several shots rang out. Martí was struck and fell from his horse. He had survived prison, exile, poverty, political persecution, and 25 years of sacrifice, only to die in his very first battle. He was 42 years old. Spanish troops recovered Martí's body before the rebels could. To them, it looked like the revolution had lost its architect. Surely the movement would collapse. Instead, it grew stronger. Martí had spent years making sure the revolution depended on an idea, not one man. The Cuban Revolutionary Party continued its work. Máximo Gómez remained in command. Antonio Maceo carried the war across the island. The movement Martí had built refused to die with him. The fighting became increasingly brutal. Spanish General Valeriano Weyler forced hundreds of thousands of civilians into reconcentration camps where disease and starvation claimed countless lives. The suffering drew international attention. Then in 1898, after the explosion of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor, the United States entered the war. Spain was defeated. More than 4 centuries of colonial rule came to an end. Martí never lived to see it, but neither did his warning. He had feared that Cuba might exchange one powerful empire for another. History would prove that concern was well-founded. José Martí never won a famous battle. He never ruled a nation. He never witnessed the freedom he had spent his life pursuing. Yet few people shaped Cuba's future more profoundly. Spain chained him for writing, exiled him for speaking, and failed to realize that ideas are far harder to imprison than people. Long before the first shots of the final war were fired, Martí had already won the battle that mattered most. He convinced an entire generation that Cuba was worth fighting for. Some revolutions are won by great generals. Others begin with a writer who refuses to stay silent. José Martí was that writer. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like and subscribe to Legends and Liberators. Every week, we uncover the remarkable people who challenged empires and changed the course of Caribbean history. And let me know in the comments, which Caribbean hero should we cover next? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.